So we're back in the shop. What you hear right now is my air cleaner, so I've got it on high. I'm trying to remove all the dust from the shop. I found a few more scratches, very delicate scratches on there. So I went back with 320 just to clean everything up, and now we're gonna clean the workbench and prep the fretboard, and we're gonna start putting the color. So this is the setup. So I've got a towel where I'm going to put the mandola on, dust free, and then I've got some denaturalized alcohol with methyl hydrate, and that's what I'm going to use to spread the dyes and control the dyes and stuff. So you see I've got 3 of the bottles of dyes there. I've got little cups that I cut. They used to be like full size, but I don't want them to tip over, so they're more stable that way. I've got a bigger one which is going to be filled with like the bottom is going to be filled with methyl hydrate, so that way I've got some on hand if I need to scrub around. I've got a bunch of rags. They are pre-cut, so that way I'm ready to go. Also a bunch of gloves, because those gloves seems to split on you, so it's always good to have a change close by. So that's pretty much it. So what I'm going to do is first thing I'm going to use my lighter color and I'm not going to disclose the colors because obviously I want to keep the color mix for the final product kind of secret, but like basically it's you go in the Phoebings. This one is the black one, and so those dyes, the leather dyes, and then you can create your own mixes. So let's say you would make a blue mandolin like I did before. You would use like the lighter color of blue and then mix your ratios accordingly to get a final product that you want. So right now I'm going to prep my denaturalized alcohol, so I want to have that on hand because I use it quite a bit depending on how the finish applies. So I've got some here. And then the first coat on the instrument is still to check for scratches, so I'm going to thin the color a bit. So I'm not going to put much here. Then I'm going to put some of the color as well, so the first color. Just like that. And now that this is in there, I'll put my gloves on. Are you guys ready for this? Okay, so this is the first coat, and it's only to check for scratches, so it's going to be very light. So looking around here on the instrument, I can't really see any obvious scratches or anything. The stainable putty, I can see a few areas that it pops back up a bit, but that's gonna disappear with the darker colors. So I go around the whole instrument looking for any scratches. I notice here there's a few lines. There's no scratches though, so those lines seems like they're sucking more of the color than somewhere else. So I'm gonna have to keep that in mind here when I apply the darker colors, so they don't actually seep into here. Yeah, and then here on around here I don't see any scratches, so we're ready to put a real coat of the first color. So right away I'm still going to use the other one because there's a lot of denaturalized alcohol and I want to spread the color already so it's lighter in the middle. And what the denaturalized alcohol does is that it kind of removes the color from the high grain and then leaves the color in the low grain. So that's how we get the difference in color. And those dyes dry really quickly. So I'll be able to turn the instrument around and start doing the other side right away. Same thing here. And right away you can see all the bear claw coming out. Well, I hope you can. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is do the side, the neck, and then I'll come back with the next color. Okay, so we've got the first color applied. As you can see here, like the grain's already starting to pop. It's already dry, so I can right away, but not everywhere, but I can start right away with the next color. So at this point, I still have some of the first color here that I'm going to keep here because I'm probably going to use some to make sure that it stays light, and then I still have my rag for that color, so I can actually put those two together. And then actually I'm going to put the rag in this one, and then I'm going to start with the second color. So once again, put the color off the side so I don't get any stains anywhere or like a big mess on my hands. So the second color is a bit darker, and that's what we're going to rub in, especially on the quilted side, on the maple side. We're going to rub in to get all that grain to pop and really showcase the wood that we have. So once again, I'm taking a brand new rag. Now to apply this one, I'm going to go around the instrument, because that's where it's going to always be darker, although this color is not really dark. There's a bit of a difference. Then as soon as I'm done with going around and applying the first layer, I'm going to go around with the denaturalized alcohol that I kept here. Then we're going to rub it in. And I'm going to use a lot of that. stretch it and stretch it, and then I'm going to go all the way in the middle. But I want to bring the least amount of the second color in the middle here. And then I'm going to leave that to the side and use the previous color. Try to bring that back out from the middle. So that's for the back. Now we're going to flip it around and do the front. So once again, I keep my first color there. This is my second color, and it doesn't take much because we're stretching it a lot. So once again, we go around the perimeter. I try to do like a tear shape all the way around, and go under the fretboard extension with it. Okay, so at this point I'm ready to start the black. It looks kind of blotchy right now because some places the alcohol evaporated and some other places like here it's still wet. So it kind of looks funny, but don't have to worry about that for now. So yeah, so I'm gonna start doing the black. So my customer mentioned that he wanted to minimize, if possible, the amount of black because of how much figure we have here. He mentioned that he would prefer to keep it to a minimum. The mandolas, if you look at any pictures for the H5, usually have a huge amount of black all around and the color is just in the middle. So I agreed with him that like we're going to try to keep it to a minimum on the outside. Plus, I don't use an airbrush. So like all the figure that we see here will still show through because I'm going to blend it in with the other colors, and then we'll be able to see through the figure even though the black is there. Also, the black acts as, it defines certain area, like it highlights and like in the points here, it creates shadows, and so the mandolin actually kind of needs to have like all those colors and darker and lighter colors just to kind of showcase the whole instrument and create, like I said, shadows and highlights. So those are the scrapers I'm using to do the binding, to clean the binding. So basically what I did is I applied the finish, and then I sprayed the first coat of lacquer, making sure there was going to be lacquer on every piece of binding everywhere. And then those little pieces of steel are scrapers, and to sharpen them I use a file, go 90 here, and then I go on an angle, and then I just have to make an edge, and then the edge away from the angle will be the sharp one. So depending if you're lefty or righty, that's how you do it. And then at this end I have, I don't know if you see, but it's flat, so I flatten the one end, and it's like probably an 8, so that gives me enough room to be able to use same thing. I have a sharp edge on this side, and I can use it this way to do like around the scroll. There's a lot of areas that this is too big to go around. I made those myself. I'm guessing you could probably find a place to buy them, but what I use, you all know I used to be in the steel industry. This is an old blade from the bandsaw that was cutting the steel, so it's probably like, it's over 16 but not quite an 8. And then so I just add a big chunk, that's the leftover from it, so I add a big chunk and I made all of those from it, and that's what was left. So easy to make, in my case was free, so if you know somebody that has a big bandsaw, tell them to keep the blade and then you can make your own. I also use those micro chisel. So those ones are from Stumac. They work great. I usually use the smallest one, and I use it, as you saw, straight up and down without applying too much pressure. You can also modify dentist picks. So this one, the edge here is what's really sharp, and I can, on the pull stroke, scrape like difficult areas, and once again around the scroll. And then if you don't have anything, but you have, like, let's say a guitar that doesn't have too much curves on it, you can use a little scraper blade like that. Make sure you put a lot of tape, or you dull one side, and I would also nip like the corner so you don't damage the wood, so that way it's a bit safer. But do make sure you tape lots and lots, because I ended up cutting myself once with one of those, and it bleeds profusely. So I like to think that every instrument that comes out of my shop is unique. Reason being, it's handcrafted, therefore they're all going to be a bit different. I carefully choose all the wood for them. I carefully craft and shape the wood and the sound of every instrument. So for me, it's important that every instrument should have their own unique labels, even though they're all the same pattern. By printing them by hand, they all end up different, and that's what I like. It's like some pieces, so some label are going to have like a little ink missing in some areas, or not, and or extra ink on some of them. So it makes the whole instrument that much more special, I believe. So the best way to put the label in is obviously before the instrument is done, and I did that. It's just I realized at some point that I forgot to sign the label, so there was no signature on it. So I got in there and ripped it off, and now we're going to install this one in before we finish the lacquer. So at this point the mandola is ready for lacquer, so like all the binding has been cleaned up, and on the peg head as well. And like I've mentioned previously, I'm not going to do any footage of the spraying. Reason being, I don't want any of my filming equipment or lights, or like for instance my computer is going to be all wrapped up and such. So basically what I'll do is just use a HPLV gun with a compressor. I have an inline filter for oil and moisture, and then I also I use the Sherwin-Williams lacquer that you can see here, and then when I'm done spraying, I'll do another video about the sanding and the polishing of the instrument. So hopefully it won't take too long. I do very thin coats of the lacquer, so I'm aiming to about 18 to 20 very thin coats. Depending on how it applies, it might be a bit more or a bit less, but that's usually what I get, about 18 to 20 coats, and then that gives you enough material to sand down without touching the finish. So I'll be able to put about 3 coats per day when I'm not working, obviously. So whenever I'm in the shop, I'll be able to do 3 coats of lacquer. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. That was a lot of information. That's probably a long video. I haven't started editing, but that's the next thing I'm going to be doing. So I hope you did enjoy the video, and until next time, I wish you well.